The turning point. The endless void of space stretched out like a black canvas dotted with pinpricks of light, where the desperate battle between the Taraxians and the Drovan Imperium raged on. The Taraxian fleet, once the pride of their star system, was now a shadow of its former glory. Mighty ships reduced to drifting debris littered the battlefield, their glowing cores extinguished forever. Admiral Virak, the leader of the Taraxians, stood rigid on the bridge of his flagship, the ethereal shield. His golden eyes scanned the tactical display, watching as red blips. The enemy ships closed in on his dwindling forces. The battle had been long and brutal, and Virak knew their defenses were crumbling. The Drovan Imperium, a ruthless race of conquerors, had brought a fleet so vast and deadly that defeat seemed inevitable. The air on the ethereal shield's bridge was thick with tension. Officers scrambled to keep systems online, shouting damage reports and status updates. Virak's second-in-command, Commander Elia, approached with grim determination etched on her face. "Admiral, we've lost the Stellar Lance and Nova Blade. Shield generators are failing across the fleet. We're not going to last much longer." Her voice wavered, but her resolve did not. Virak clenched his fists, his sharp claws pressing into his palms. "We cannot let the Imperium claim Taraxian space. They will enslave our people and strip our worlds bare. We must fight to the last." Suddenly, a junior officer called out, "Admiral, incoming transmission on an unknown frequency." Virak turned, his tail swishing in irritation. Who would contact us now? Hatch it through. The holographic display flickered to life, and a figure appeared, a human. His uniform was sleek and unfamiliar, bearing insignias that glinted like starlight. His expression was calm but commanding, and his steel-gray eyes seemed to bore into the souls of everyone in the room. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Earth ship Resolute. We've been monitoring your battle and have decided to intervene. Reinforcements are inbound." The bridge went silent. Every Taraxian officer stared at the hologram, disbelief written across their faces. "Humans?" Virak whispered, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Why would you risk yourselves for us? Your people are still new to the galactic stage." Captain Hayes' lips curled into a faint smile. "Humanity doesn't stand idly by when injustice unfolds. We've seen what the Drovan Imperium does to those they conquer. We won't let them add you to their list of victims. Prepare to rally your forces around us." Before Virak could respond, the stars outside the bridge shimmered, and a colossal ship emerged from hyperspace. The Resolute was unlike anything the Taraxians had ever seen. Its angular hull glinted ominously, bristling with weaponry that seemed more advanced than anything in the galaxy. Flanking it were several smaller Earth ships, each sleek and deadly. The Drovan fleet shifted course almost immediately, their attention now fixed on the newcomers. Virak's holographic display lit up with new blue markers, Earth ships moving into formation. "Admiral," Commander Elia murmured, awe creeping into her voice. "They're actually here. Let's see if they can back their words with action." Virak replied, his tone a mix of hope and doubt. The Resolute fired the first shot, a concentrated energy beam that sliced through the shields of a Drovan dreadnought as if they were paper. The enemy ship exploded in a brilliant flash, leaving no time for retreat. The rest of the Earth fleet followed suit, unleashing the coordinated barrage of missiles, railguns, and energy cannons. On the Drovan flagship, Supreme Commander Drovak slammed his fist onto the armrest of his throne-like chair. "What is this insolence? Who dares interfere with the Drovan Imperium's conquest?" "Humans, Commander," replied an officer, his voice trembling. "They brought technology we've never seen before." Drovak snarled. "Then they will die with the Taraxians. Focus all fire on that lead ship." Back aboard the Resolute, Captain Hayes remained composed as reports streamed in. "Maintain formation," he ordered. "Focus fire on their capital ships and draw their attention away from the Taraxians." The Earth fleet moved with precision, their advanced AI systems, and disciplined crews executing maneuvers that left the Drovins scrambling. Meanwhile, the Taraxian ships, inspired by the unexpected arrival of their saviors, regrouped and joined the fray. Together, they began to push back against the once overwhelming enemy forces. On the ethereal shield, Virak's earlier skepticism melted into admiration. He watched as the humans coordinated effortlessly, their actions guided by strategy and ingenuity. Turning to his crew, he raised his voice. "All Taraxian ships, follow the humans' lead. Give them cover and take out any stragglers they leave behind." The tide of battle began to shift. The Drovin fleet, though vast and powerful, faltered against the combined forces of Earth and Tarax. Explosions rippled across the void as enemy ships were reduced to wreckage. As the Resolute led a charge toward the heart of the Drovin fleet, Captain Hayes opened a channel to Virak. "Admiral, we've identified their flagship. If we take it out, the rest of their fleet will fall into disarray. Are you with us?" Virak nodded firmly. "We're with you, Captain. Let's end this." Together, the Resolute and the Ethereal Shield spearheaded an assault on the Drovin flagship, their combined firepower overwhelming its defenses. The final blow came when the Resolute unleashed a devastating neutron beam, tearing through the enemy ship's hull. The flagship detonated in a fiery burst, and the remaining Drovin ships scattered, retreating into hyperspace. A wave of relief washed over the battlefield as silence fell. The Taraxians had survived, but only because of the humans' timely intervention. Virak opened a channel to the Resolute. "Captain Hayes, you've saved my people from annihilation. We owe you a debt we can never repay." Hayes smiled faintly. "No need for debts, Admiral. Just remember this day when someone else calls for help. Humanity stands for unity." The transmission ended, leaving Virak to gaze at the battlefield. Among the wreckage of war, a glimmer of hope had emerged. For the Taraxians, and perhaps the galaxy, everything had changed. A fragile alliance. As the smoldering remnants of the Drovin fleet disappeared into hyperspace, a tense silence settled over the battlefield. The Taraxians had survived, but the cost had been devastating. Admiral Virak stood on the bridge of the ethereal shield, his golden eyes scanning the void where the Drovin armada had once been. The Taraxian fleet, battered and broken, hovered precariously among the wreckage, their numbers reduced to a fraction of what they had been. Despite the victory, uncertainty loomed large. Virak turned to Commander Elia, who stood beside him, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "Open a channel to the human flagship," he ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Captain Daniel Hayes of the Resolute. His gray eyes, sharp and calculating, met Virak's gaze. The Taraxian admiral inclined his head slightly, a gesture of both respect and gratitude. "Captain Hayes," Virak began, his voice steady but tinged with weariness. "On behalf of the Taraxian people, I extend our deepest thanks. Without your intervention, we would not be here." Hayes nodded, his expression neutral. "It was the right thing to do, Admiral. Humanity has learned the hard way that standing by, while others suffer, only invites greater danger later. But this battle was only a skirmish in a larger war. The Drovin Imperium will return, and next time, they won't underestimate us." Virak's claws tapped against the armrest of his chair. He knew Hayes was right. The Drovin retreat was not a defeat but a recalibration. They would come back with more ships, better strategies, and an even greater thirst for conquest. "We must prepare," Virak said finally, "but we cannot do it alone. Our fleet is crippled, our resources depleted. We need allies." Captain Hayes leaned forward slightly, his tone measured. "Humanity will stand with you, Admiral, but there are conditions. This isn't just about saving Tarax. It's about ensuring that the Drovin Imperium doesn't grow stronger and threaten every free species in the galaxy. We'll need to coordinate our efforts, share intelligence, and establish a joint command." The suggestion was bold, almost presumptuous, but Virak saw the logic behind it. A united front would be far stronger than any one species fighting alone. Still, he hesitated. The Tyraxians were a proud people, unused to relying on outsiders. Before he could respond, Commander Alia spoke up. "Admiral, the humans proved their worth today. Without them, we would have been annihilated. Perhaps this alliance is the only way forward." Virak considered her words, then turned back to Hayes. "Very well, Captain. We'll discuss the terms of this alliance in detail once we've assessed the situation here. For now, let's focus on recovery." "Agreed," Hayes replied. "We'll deploy our engineering teams to assist with repairs. Let's get your fleet operational before the Drovan decide to strike again." The aftermath. As the Earth and Tyraxian crews worked together to salvage what they could from the battlefield, an uneasy camaraderie began to form. Human engineers, clad in sleek black uniforms, moved efficiently through the damaged Tyraxian ships, their tools emitting soft hums and glows as they repaired critical systems. The Tyraxians watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, their alien features betraying their wariness of these newcomers. On the Resolute, Captain Hayes gathered his senior officers in the strategy room. A holographic map of the sector hovered above the central table, displaying the positions of nearby systems, trade routes, and Drovan outposts. Hayes stood at the head of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm, "we've taken the first step, but this war is far from over. The Drovan retreat was tactical, not desperate. They'll regroup, analyze our capabilities, and come back stronger. We need to be ready." Commander Rachel Sinclair, his first officer, nodded. "The Tyraxians are tough, but their fleet is in shambles. They'll need more than repairs. They'll need upgrades." Hayes gestured to the map. "That's where we come in. Earth's technology gives us an edge, but we can't win this alone. We need to turn the Tyraxians into a force the Drovans will fear." Chief Engineer Marcus Dunn leaned forward, his brows furrowed. "Captain, retrofitting their ships with Earth tech won't be easy. Their systems are fundamentally different. It'll take time." "Time we don't have," Hayes replied. "But we'll make it work. Focus on integrating key systems, shields, weapons, propulsion, anything that can give them a fighting chance." The first joint operation. 2 days later, the newly repaired Tyraxian fleet, bolstered by Earth technology, conducted its first joint operation with the Resolute and its escort ships. A Drovan scouting party had been spotted near a resource-rich asteroid belt, likely gathering intelligence for their next move. Admiral Virak and Captain Hayes stood side by side on the bridge of the ethereal shield, the atmosphere between them tense but cooperative. The combined fleet moved in perfect formation, their movements coordinated by Earth's advanced AI systems. Virak couldn't help but marvel at the humans' efficiency and precision. As they approached the asteroid belt, sensors picked up the Drovan ships, 3 cruisers, and a smaller frigate. The enemy vessels turned to engage, their plasma cannons charging with ominous red glows. "Captain Hayes," Virak said, his tone almost eager, "shall we see what your upgrades can do?" Hayes smirked. "Let's." The Tyraxian ships, now equipped with Earth's advanced shields and railgun technology, moved into position. The Resolute fired first, its main cannon sending a beam of energy slicing through one of the Drovan cruisers. The Tyraxian ships followed suit, their newly installed railguns puncturing the enemy's hulls with devastating accuracy. The battle was over quickly. The combined firepower of Earth and Tyrax left the Drovan ships in ruins, their wreckage scattered among the asteroids. For the first time in weeks, Virak felt a spark of hope. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "Your technology is formidable." Hayes turned to him, his expression serious. "This was just a skirmish. The real test is yet to come. But today we proved something important. Together, we're stronger than the Drovans ever anticipated." As the fleet regrouped and prepared to return to the Tyraxian homeworld, Virak couldn't help but wonder. Was this alliance the beginning of a new chapter for his people, or would it lead to even greater challenges? The shadow of betrayal. The Taraxian homeworld, a lush planet of towering crystalline forests and shimmering turquoise oceans, was a picture of serenity from orbit. But aboard the ethereal shield, Admiral Virak was anything but at peace. The recent skirmish with the Drovan scouting party had proven that the combined fleet of humans and Taraxians could hold its own, but the battle had also revealed an uncomfortable truth. The Drovans were studying them, adapting and evolving their strategies. Standing on the bridge, Virak gazed at the planet below, its beauty doing little to soothe his restless mind. Captain Daniel Hayes appeared on a nearby console, his holographic form crisp and confident. Despite their growing camaraderie, there was still a hint of guardedness between the two leaders. "We've received new intelligence," Hayes began. "Our long-range sensors detected an unusual signal near the Beta Centauri expanse. It's faint, but it matches Drovan communication frequencies. They might be preparing for another assault." Virak's sharp claws tapped against the armrest of his chair. "What do you suggest, Captain?" Hayes didn't hesitate. "A preemptive strike. If the Drovans are amassing forces, we need to disrupt them before they can regroup." The idea was bold, even reckless, but Virak knew it had merit. The Drovans thrived on overwhelming their enemies, and denying them that advantage could buy the Alliance precious time. "Very well," he said. "But this time, the Taraxians take the lead. We cannot let your people bear the burden of this war alone." Hayes smiled faintly. "Understood. Let's show the Drovans that this alliance isn't just a one-sided arrangement." The mission to Beta Centauri. The journey to the Beta Centauri expanse took several days. The combined fleet moved cautiously, their ships cloaked in electromagnetic silence to avoid detection. The humans' advanced stealth systems allowed them to navigate the vastness of space undetected, a skill that left the Taraxians both impressed and unnerved. On the Resolute, Captain Hayes and his senior officers pored over the sensor data. The faint Drovan signal had grown stronger as they approached, revealing a cluster of ships hidden within the asteroid field that stretched across the expanse. The Drovans weren't just regrouping. They were constructing a forward operating base. "It's a staging ground," Commander Rachel Sinclair said, her voice grim. "If they finish building that base, they'll have a foothold in this sector. We can't let that happen." Hayes nodded. "Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. A frontal assault will tip them off and give them time to call for reinforcements. Then we strike from the shadows." The voice chimed in. Admiral Virak had joined the strategy session via hologram. "The asteroid field provides ample cover. We can divide our forces, striking their defenses while your stealth teams sabotage their construction efforts." Hayes exchanged a glance with Sinclair, then nodded. "It's risky, but it could work. Let's make it happen." The assault begins. The fleet split into two groups. The Taraxian ships, equipped with their newly enhanced railguns and shields, formed the main assault force, drawing the Drovan fleet's attention. Meanwhile, the Earth ships, led by the Resolute, maneuvered through the asteroid field, their cloaking systems rendering them invisible to Drovan sensors. As the Taraxian ships emerged from the shadows, the Drovans reacted predictably, mobilizing their fleet to engage. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness as the two sides clashed, the Taraxians holding their ground with newfound confidence. On the Resolute, Hayes watched the chaos unfold on the tactical display. "Helm, bring us into position. Engineering teams, prepare for infiltration." The Resolute and its escort ships weaved through the asteroids, evading detection as they approached the partially constructed base. The structure was massive, its skeletal frame bristling with defensive turrets and docking ports. Drovan workers swarmed over it like ants, oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. "Commander Sinclair," Hayes said, his voice steady, "deploy the infiltration teams. Their objective is the reactor core. Disable it, and the base is done. Shadows and sabotage." The infiltration teams, a mix of human Marines and Taraxian commandos, launched from the Resolute in sleek, unmarked shuttles. Among them was Lieutenant Aaron Vega, a seasoned Marine known for her unflinching bravery. Beside her stood Kareth, a Taraxian warrior whose crystalline armor shimmered faintly in the dim light. "Ready for this, Kareth?" Vega asked, her tone light despite the tension. Kareth's golden eyes gleamed. "I was born ready, human. Let's show these Drovans what happens when they challenge us." The shuttles landed silently on the base's surface, their stealth plating rendering them invisible to Drovan sensors. The teams moved quickly, planting charges on key structural points and infiltrating the base's central reactor chamber. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of machinery. Drovan workers scurried about, oblivious to the intruders. Vega signaled her team, and they moved like shadows, disabling defenses and planting explosives with precision. Just as they reached the reactor core, the alarm blared. The Drovan defenders had discovered the sabotage. "Looks like they noticed us," Vega muttered, drawing her plasma rifle. "Let's make this quick." The cost of victory. Back on the Resolute, Hayes monitored the infiltration team's progress, his jaw tight as the situation unfolded. "Can they complete the mission?" Sinclair asked, her voice tight. "They will," Hayes replied, his confidence unwavering. "Failure isn't an option." On the base, Vega and her team fought their way through the Drovan defenders, Kareth's crystalline blades cutting through enemies with brutal efficiency. As the countdown timer on their charges ticked down, they made a desperate dash for their shuttles. The moment the charges detonated, the base erupted in a fiery explosion, its skeletal frame collapsing in on itself. The shockwave rippled through the asteroid field, scattering debris and forcing the remaining Drovan ships to retreat. Cheers erupted across the combined fleet as the destruction of the base was confirmed. But the victory was bittersweet. Several members of the infiltration team had been lost, their sacrifice a stark reminder of the war's cost. A new threat. As the fleet regrouped and returned to safer territory, a sense of unease lingered. The Drovan retreat felt too orderly, too deliberate. Hayes and Virak, now working more closely than ever, began to suspect that the destruction of the base had been part of a larger plan. "We've dealt them a blow," Virak said, "but I can't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning." Hayes nodded, his expression grim. "The Drovans are testing us. They want to see how far we're willing to go. But whatever they're planning, we'll be ready." As the fleet moved through the stars, the alliance between Earth and Terrax grew stronger. But in the shadows, the Drovan Imperium was already laying the groundwork for their next move, a move that would push the fragile alliance to its limits. The fault lines of unity. The alliance between humanity and the Terraxians was an unprecedented step in galactic history, a union born not of shared heritage, but of shared survival. Yet, as the two civilizations worked together, cracks began to form beneath the surface. Trust, fragile as glass, was being tested by suspicion, miscommunication, and the weight of their precarious circumstances. Admiral Virak stood in the council chamber aboard the Taraxian flagship Ethereal Shield, his golden eyes scanning the room. Representatives from both species had gathered to discuss the next phase of their campaign against the Drovan Imperium. On one side, Taraxian commanders sat in their crystalline armor, their expressions cold and unreadable. Opposite them were the humans, their black uniforms crisp, their faces etched with resolve. At the center of the table stood a holographic map of the galaxy, displaying Drovan-controlled sectors in ominous red. Captain Daniel Hayes of the Resolute leaned forward, his hands resting on the table as he addressed the group. The Drovan retreat at Beta Centauri wasn't a loss for them. It was a recalibration. They shifted their focus to a neighboring sector, one that's critical to their supply chain. If we strike now, we can cut them off at the knees. Virak's tail flicked slightly, a sign of his unease. A bold strategy, Captain. But are we certain this isn't a trap? The Drovans are cunning, and their withdrawal may have been designed to lure us into overextending. Commander Elia, standing beside Virak, nodded in agreement. We've seen how the Drovan Imperium operates. They play the long game, sacrificing battles to win wars. Hayes straightened, his steel-gray eyes locking onto Virak's. Caution has its place, Admiral, but hesitation could cost us everything. The longer we wait, the more time they have to fortify their position. We need to act. The tension in the room was palpable. While the humans valued decisiveness, the Taraxians, burdened by the weight of their losses, were wary of rushing into another conflict. The meeting dragged on, each side presenting arguments that only deepened the divide. A mysterious encounter. As the debate raged, a sudden alert interrupted the proceedings. Virak's communication officer appeared on the chamber's holoscreen, his expression grim. Admiral, we've detected an unidentified vessel approaching our location. Its signature doesn't match any known Drovan or ally technology. The room fell silent. Hayes exchanged a glance with Sinclair, who whispered, "Could be a rogue faction or a neutral party." Virak turned to the group. "We'll address this together. Let's see who dares approach us in the midst of a war." The ethereal shield and the Resolute moved into a defensive formation, their weapons systems primed. As the unidentified ship emerged from hyperspace, its design stunned the onlookers. It was sleek and angular, its hull covered in a dark, reflective material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. It exuded an air of menace, like a predator lurking in the shadows. A transmission crackled through. "This is Envoy Thalorian of the Tyran Dominion. We come with an offer that may interest both humans and Taraxians." Virak and Hayes exchanged wary looks. The Tyran Dominion was a reclusive and enigmatic species, known for their advanced technology and refusal to involve themselves in galactic conflicts. For them to appear now was no coincidence. The Tyran proposal. Envoy Thalorian's holographic image flickered to life on the bridge of the Resolute. His elongated form and featureless black eyes gave him an otherworldly presence, and his voice was calm yet commanding. "We have observed your conflict with the Drovan Imperium and find your alliance intriguing. The Tyran Dominion rarely intervenes in the affairs of others, but we see an opportunity to shift the balance of power." Hayes crossed his arms. "What's the catch? You wouldn't be here unless you wanted something." Thalorian tilted his head slightly. "Astute, Captain Hayes. The Drovan Imperium is expanding into sectors that border our territories. While we have no fear of their incursions, their ambitions disrupt the stability of this galaxy. We wish to ensure their expansion is curtailed. In return, we offer you weapons, technology, and intelligence." Virak's claws tapped rhythmically against the armrest of his chair. "And what do you require of us in return?" The envoy's dark eyes seemed to shimmer. "Loyalty. When the time comes, we may call upon your alliance for a favor. Until then, our assistance comes without strings, save for the assurance that you will not use our technology against us." The room erupted into murmurs as both humans and Taraxians debated the proposal. Hayes leaned toward Virak. "Their help could tip the scales in our favor. With Tyran technology, we might be able to end this war quickly." "But at what cost?" Virak countered. "The Tyrans are not altruistic. Their aid comes with unseen chains." Tensions rise. The decision to accept or reject the Tyran offer divided the alliance. Some, including Commander Elia, argued that their survival depended on taking every advantage they could get. Others, like Lieutenant Vega, warned against trusting a species with such a mysterious agenda. The strain began to show in joint operations. During a reconnaissance mission near the Halvan Nebula, a miscommunication between human and Taraxian forces nearly resulted in friendly fire. The incident sparked heated arguments among the crews, with accusations of recklessness and mistrust flying freely. On the Resolute, Hayes confronted Sinclair. "We can't afford these kinds of mistakes. If we don't get on the same page, the Drovan Imperium won't have to lift a finger. We'll destroy ourselves." Sinclair nodded grimly. "The alliance is fraying, Captain. If we don't find a way to bridge the gap, we're finished. A show of unity. Realizing the alliance was on the brink of collapse, Hayes and Virac agreed to a high-risk operation designed to rebuild trust. A massive Drovan supply convoy had been detected in a contested sector, heavily guarded but critical to their war effort. Destroying it would cripple their logistics and send a clear message. The mission required seamless coordination between human and Taraxian forces. The Resolute and the Ethereal Shield would lead the assault, flanked by mixed squadrons of Earth and Taraxian fighters. As the operation unfolded, the combined fleet moved with precision, their forces weaving together like a single entity. The convoy, caught off guard, fell quickly. For the first time in weeks, the Alliance tasted a victory unmarred by tension. The cost of choices. After the mission, Virac and Hayes stood together on the bridge of the Resolute. The victory had bolstered morale, but the shadow of the Tyran proposal still loomed. "We made progress today," Hayes said, "but the real test is still ahead. The Drovan Imperium won't stay on the defensive for long." Virac nodded. "And when they strike, we must be united. But we must decide soon. Do we stand alone, or do we take the Xaren's offer?" Hayes gazed out at the stars, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. "Whatever we decide, we need to be ready. Because if we fail, it won't just be our alliance that falls. It'll be the galaxy." The heart of the storm. The alliance between humanity and the Taraxians stood at a crossroads. That Xaran Dominion's offer hung over every decision like a double-edged sword, one side promising victory, the other hinting at dangerous entanglements. Meanwhile, the Drovan Imperium, wounded but unbroken, began to stir. Whispers of a massive offensive spread like wildfire, and the fragile coalition braced itself for the storm. A chilling revelation. Admiral Virac stood on the bridge of the Ethereal Shield, his golden eyes fixed on a tactical display. A new intelligence report had just come through from the Taraxian network, intercepted by human decryptors. It was grim news. The Drovans were mobilizing an armada far larger than anyone had anticipated. Worse still, they weren't merely targeting the Alliance forces. They were planning a direct strike on Tarax itself. Commander Alia broke the silence. "Admiral, if the Drovans reach Tarax, our planetary defenses won't hold. We've barely begun to rebuild after the last attack." Virac's jaw tightened. "We will not let them set foot on Taraxian soil. Open a channel to Captain Hayes." Moments later, the human captain's hologram appeared, his steel-gray eyes sharp and calculating. "Admiral," Hayes greeted, his voice steady. "I assume you've seen the report." Virac nodded grimly. "The Drovans are bringing the full weight of their empire against us. If we don't stop them before they reach Tarax, it's over." Hayes crossed his arms, his mind already racing through possible strategies. "We can't fight them head-on, not with the numbers they're bringing. But if we strike at their staging ground before they launch, we might have a chance to break their momentum." Alia frowned. "Their staging ground is heavily fortified. It's a death trap. It's a risk we have to take," Hayes countered. "If we sit back and wait, they'll overwhelm us." Virac looked between the two. "What about the Xirans? Their technology could tip the scales." The room fell silent. Hayes' expression hardened. "You know where I stand, Admiral. I don't trust them. And I don't believe in fighting one war just to end up in another. But if you're willing to take that gamble, I'll follow your lead." The weight of the decision pressed heavily on Virac. After a long moment, he made his choice. "We'll fight without them. If we win, it will be our victory. If we lose, we'll do so on our own terms." A desperate assault. The combined fleet gathered in orbit over Tarax, preparing for the most dangerous mission yet. The Drovan staging ground, located on a barren moon in the Ta Draconis system, was surrounded by orbital defenses and shielded by a network of advanced jamming systems. To succeed, the Alliance needed precision, coordination, and a healthy dose of luck. The fleet's engineers worked tirelessly to modify the ships, equipping them with experimental stealth modules designed to evade Drovan sensors. Human and Taraxian crews worked side by side, their differences momentarily set aside in the face of impending annihilation. In the quiet moments before the assault, Captain Hayes addressed his crew. Standing on the bridge of the Resolute, he spoke with the conviction of a man who had faced impossible odds before. "We're heading into the lion's den. The Drovans think they've already won, but we're about to remind them who they're dealing with. Stick to your training. Trust your teammates, and remember why we fight. For Earth, for Terrax, for everyone who believes in a future free from tyranny." Across the fleet, similar speeches were given, rallying the spirits of those who knew the odds were stacked against them. As the final preparations were made, the fleet jumped into hyperspace, their destination the heart of enemy territory. Into the fire. The Draconis system was a graveyard of shattered moons and asteroid fields, the perfect environment for an ambush. As the fleet exited hyperspace, the stealth modules activated, rendering the ships nearly invisible to Drovan scanners. The moon hosting the staging ground loomed ahead, its surface scored by craters and artificial structures. The Resolute led the fleet, its advanced sensors sweeping the area. Drovan defenses detected, Sinclair reported. Orbital platforms, fighter squadrons, and a planetary shield network. "Target the orbital platforms first," Hayes ordered. "We'll clear a path for our ground teams." The battle began with surgical precision. Human and Taraxian ships moved like shadows, striking the platforms before disappearing back into the asteroid field. Drovan fighters scrambled to respond, but the Alliance's coordination and superior technology gave them the edge. Meanwhile, the ground teams prepared for their insertion. Lieutenant Aaron Vega led the human contingent, joined by Karath and his elite Taraxian commandos. Their objective was the moon's central command hub, where the planetary shield generator was located. As their shuttles descended, Drovan anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky. Evasive maneuvers. Vega barked, her shuttle shaking violently as it weaved through the onslaught. "We're not dying before we touch down." The ground offensive. The shuttles landed amid a storm of plasma fire, their hulls scorched but intact. Vega and Karath's teams disembarked, their weapons blazing as they pushed toward the command hub. The terrain was treacherous, a maze of rocky outcroppings and Drovan fortifications. Karath's crystalline blades flashed in the dim light as he tore through enemy ranks, his movements a blur of precision and power. Vega, armed with a plasma rifle, provided covering fire, her sharp commands keeping her team focused. As they breached the command hub, alarms blared. Drovan soldiers poured into the corridors, but the Alliance teams fought with unrelenting determination. Every inch gained was paid for in blood, but they pressed on, finally reaching the shield generator. Vega planted the charges while Karath and his commandos held off the reinforcements. "How much longer?" Karath shouted, his blades slicing through another enemy. "Almost there," Vega yelled back. "Just keep them off me." With seconds to spare, the charges were set. "Fall back," Vega ordered, and the team sprinted for the exit as the generator exploded behind them. The planetary shield flickered, then collapsed, exposing the Drovan base to orbital bombardment. Victory and sacrifice. Above the moon, the Resolute and Ethereal Shield unleashed their full arsenal, raining destruction on the Drovan base. The enemy fleet, now exposed, attempted to retreat but was met with relentless pursuit. One by one, the Drovan ships were destroyed, their remains joining the debris field around the moon. The Alliance had won, but the cost was steep. Many brave soldiers had fallen, their sacrifices etched into the memory of those who survived. On the bridge of the Resolute, Hayes watched the battlefield with a heavy heart. "We did it," Sinclair said softly. "But it doesn't feel like a victory." "It rarely does," Hayes replied. "But every step we take brings us closer to ending this war. A new horizon." As the fleet regrouped, Virek and Hayes met aboard the Ethereal Shield. The tension that had once defined their relationship was gone, replaced by mutual respect. "We fought well today," Varek said. "Your people have proven themselves time and again." "So have yours," Hayes replied. "But this is just the beginning. The Drovins won't stop until they're forced to. And we still have a decision to make about the tyrants." Varek's expression hardened. "One battle at a time, Captain. For now, let us honor those we've lost and prepare for what comes next." The Alliance had weathered another storm, but darker clouds loomed on the horizon. The Drovin Imperium was far from defeated, and the shadow of the Thyran Dominion's offer remained a constant presence. As the fleet sailed through the stars, united by purpose but divided by uncertainty, one thing was clear: the war was far from over.